Hey guys, it's Graham. What's crackin'? This is my review of a graphic novel by Makoto Yukimura called, I believe it's pronounced just Planets, even though it looks like Planetes. This is a graphic novel series that started in '99 and concluded in 2004. I didn't hear about it until just this year. There were 2 volumes. This is the first one. I checked it out from my local library, hence the masking tape, just no doxing, etc., etc. But it's about mankind pushing out into space in 2070 or so. The whole story spans about 5 years, but we focus on this core crew of characters, mainly a young man named Hachimaki, who's Japanese, and Fi, who is American, and Yuri, who's Russian. It's kind of mundane when it starts out. It's a little bit episodic. They meet kind of the pioneers of the upward movement into space over the course of the 21st century. Hachi and his friends, his comrades, they have kind of a mundane job of collecting trash that floats around in low orbit, because even small objects moving at a high rate of speed, as they are wont to do in low orbit, we're talking 20,000 miles per hour, they can cause devastating damage to spacecraft. I think there's even a picture of that early on in here. I didn't really bookmark any of this because I don't want to get too deep into the minutia of the individual stories. After these smaller, more contained episodes conclude, we get into the larger through line of the story, and that is Hachimaki's obsession with making the crew of this ship that's going to do the first manned round trip voyage to Jupiter. And he becomes so obsessed that he's severing interpersonal contact and love and compassion and all that with his family, with his crewmates, and so on and so forth. And he's got this argument that he's having with a new crewmate who comes through about halfway through the book, a woman named Tanabe, who's trying to make the case for love and compassion and camaraderie and all that stuff. And he's like, no, I need to achieve greatness. I need to be on this crew. Mankind needs to push out into space. In addition to all of the hard science and even some of the horror and survivalist elements of it, it's really a philosophical question about what matters most to us and what makes us human, and what we're really trying to accomplish with our lives. And there are conflicted familial relationships. Hachimaki's got a strained relationship with his father, who was also a great astronaut. His younger brother, who's an aspiring astronaut. His mother, who has the patience of a saint throughout all of it. There's some eco-terrorism and stuff. There's a little bit of language. There's nothing, more severe than an S word, we'll say. But there was one particular storyline that touches on something I've seen in other books, not necessarily in this vein, but it kind of reminded me of Hatchet, especially the sequel, The River. There's one of these storylines where Hachi and a Ukrainian astronaut get stranded on kind of the far side of the moon during a test run. Their ship crashes, they're low on oxygen. They aren't able to radio for help, but there's a narrow mathematical window with the amount of oxygen that they have. If they preserve their oxygen, they can get within range of a rescue signal. But his fellow astronaut gives up, and at first he found a kind of a kindred spirit with the guy, because he, like Hachi, had this desire to push people away so that he could achieve greatness on his own. But in his dying moments, he called out for his mother. And Hachi was extremely incensed about that. He's like, why did you do that? You were supposed to be tough. You were supposed to be this thing that I want to be. You're not supposed to give in to these weaker desires. You're supposed to want to reach for greatness. It reminded me of a scene in The River where once Brian realizes he's alone, that the government agent who's out there with him has been struck by lightning and is now in a coma. Brian needs to grind hard, and work fast to build a raft and get him to safety before the man, Derek, slips so far into the coma that he's beyond rescuing. And at one point he's been awake for 48 hours, and as he's floating down this river in the dark, he starts to hallucinate. And he thinks of his mother, and he has these deep, real spiritual moments, when he's isolated and he's at the edge, and he has to come to grips with, who he really is, what he really values, and then, keep pushing forward to survive. I love that concept. I love that idea of finding out what your limits are and then pushing beyond them and finding out what you really are and what you're about. And that's just one of many concepts and episodes and things that is explored in this book. I'm very excited to check out the second volume of it, and I encourage you to go check out the Cracker Stack and see my more detailed write-up about it. The artwork is beautiful. It kind of reminds me of my reading of the manga of All You Need Is Kill. This is one that, I could read it several times over and continue to be enthralled by the story and the characters, but I also have a great deal to learn from the quality of the artwork. I'm going to bring this one a little bit closer so you can appreciate the detail a little bit more. This is just one of the scenes with the vehicles, and the Space Defense League is a group of space eco-terrorists. We can't escape that. Here's one of the more kinetic action scenes as something happens up in space. This was excellent. Fee is a smoker, and she's constantly on the lookout for a place to smoke, which is kind of few and far between in space. But I highly recommend this, even if you're not really a big reader of manga or graphic novels. It was written and drawn in Japanese, so you've got to read it from right to left. They even warn you if you were to open it up like a regular Western book, get to the back page of it rather, and say like, hey, don't do this. You've got to read it the other way. But even if you're not a big fan of graphic novels or something, like, you could get into this one. It's very, very well done. So this is a 5-star recommendation for me. Check out Planets Volume 1 by Makoto Yukimura. And when I get my hands on the second volume, I'll do a review of that one as well. Until next time, you guys know the rigmarole. Like, comment, and so on and so forth. Drive safe. See you out there.